Okay, so everyone please grab a seat. We're going to start our meeting. We'll try to do it on time at 6:30. I'm just going to put this in my pocket here. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andy Davidoff, and I'm the chair of tonight's public hearing and the director.
Recording in progress.
Oh, that's okay. So I'm just going to repeat that. I'm the chair of tonight's public hearing and the director for Electoral Area I of the RDCK, and I'd like to welcome all of you here, and I'm really glad that we have a really good turnout. I hope everyone has seen a copy of the information package online pertaining to this public hearing. The package includes information on the proposed new Area I Sentinel Mountain Official Community Plan, Bylaw 2821, and related amendment bylaws numbers 2967 and 2968 to implement the proposed new Official Community Plan for Electoral Area I. At this time, I'd like to introduce the RDCK staff here this evening. Far right, Laura Christie, our planning technician in our planning department, who will be recording the minutes of this meeting. Stephanie Johnson, planner, and Nelson White, the RDCK's planning manager. This public hearing is being held as required under the Local Government Act to consider the proposed Bylaw 2821 and related amendment bylaws 2967 and 2968. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to share your comments regarding these bylaws to the board of the Regional District of Central Kootenay, who will decide to approve or refuse the Area I Sentinel Mountain Official Community Plan and related amendment bylaws. My role tonight. For the purposes of this hearing, I am here today representing the board of the Regional District of Central Kootenay. As chairperson, it is my job to impartially preside over the public hearing, keep order, and to ensure that everyone is provided with an opportunity to speak. To remain impartial, as chair, I will not comment on the proposed Area I Sentinel Mountain Official Community Plan Bylaw 2821 and related amendment bylaws. The role of the RDCK staff present tonight is to present information about the proposed new bylaw and related implementation bylaws, and to answer questions and record the minutes of the public hearing for consideration by the RDCK board. Staff's comments will be limited to technical matters and should not be construed as support for or opposition to the proposed new Official Community Plan for Area I, including the amendment bylaws. Planner Stephanie Johnson and Nelson White are here to present on the proposed new OCP for Area I and related amendment bylaws, and Laura Christie is here to record the public hearing minutes. Following the presentations by RDCK staff, I will invite questions from the audience. We have a microphone there. With that's going to be an active mic, and that's where people can come up and speak. This is intended to allow for the audience to ask any questions of staff, to allow for clarification on aspects of the proposed new Official Community Plan for Area I and related amendment bylaws. And then we will open the floor to formal submissions to hear from those present who believe that their interest in their property is affected by the proposed new official community plan and related amendment bylaws. And I just want to make a couple of comments about questions. Basically, if a question is asked and answered by staff, and then someone else stands up and asks the same question that staff has already answered, I will rule that the question has been asked and answered, and that we will move on to new questions. So that is just to keep order and not having like 10 people asking the same question. However, each one of you will have a right during the formal submission portion of the meeting to express your opinion on the record, and that a transcript of that is made to present to the board. Some of you have already presented or submitted written submissions to the board, and that was those were allowed up to 4 o'clock this afternoon. You don't have to read your submission during the formal part again, because it's already part of the written record that will be going to the board. And I'll just remind people again when we get to the formal submission portion of the meeting. So I hope that's clear to everyone, the way we're going to do this. I really believe that the people we have here know about how to be respectful, and I will make sure that we're not, if anything happens where there's something being said that I believe is disrespectful, I will address that as the chair. Now, I would ask our planner, Stephanie Johnson, to proceed with the presentation by staff.
Thank you, Chair Davidoff. In my presentation this evening, I'll be touching on where we've been on this project's journey to date, the mandatory and optional contents for official community plans, what's new and different about this official community plan, including related amendment bylaws number 2967 and 2968, which form part of this public hearing. I'll give an overview of the engagement opportunities, and then I'll wrap up with some information about next steps. And I'll be providing a summary of written comments received related to this public hearing, and those are the comments we received before 4 p.m. today. So now I'm just going to dive into a little bit of background, just to provide everyone with some context. What's an official community plan? I just thought this would be a good opportunity to do a quick refresh for folks on what an official community plan is. In our planning world, we often refer to an official community plan as an OCP. That's the short form. In case I switch into that language, that's all I'm referring to. So an official community plan is a set of policy statements and a series of maps that together provide a consistent and coordinated approach for land use planning and development. An official community plan sets out the long-term vision for a community. It's intended to be a statement of objectives and policies to guide decisions on planning and land use management. So this slide touches on where we've been. As a reminder, the existing Kootenay-Columbia Rivers Official Community Plan, which includes electoral areas I and J, was adopted in 1996. The Area I Official Community Plan Review Project originally launched in 2016, and past work included community surveys that year, a series of community workshops in 2017, followed by a pause in response to the feedback to undertake further studies such as the drastic aquifer vulnerability study for the Shore Acres Voisin subdivision area. Then the project was further paused due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In the summer of 2022, planning staff drafted an updated project work plan, which received endorsement by the board in the fall of that year, and the Area I OCP review project was relaunched to the community with a virtual open house in January of 2023. When the OCP was relaunched, planning staff put together a revised work and engagement plan. And as you can see from the slide, we are currently in phase 4, finalize and implement. Each phase has also included community engagement opportunities, which I'll speak to in a bit more detail a little later in this presentation. This is just a general overview of the timeline. As you know, the project was commenced in 2016, and here we are today at the public hearing in 2025. This slide really provides an overview of the project timeline and involvement throughout the project by Electoral Area I's Advisory Planning Commission, now known as the Advisory Planning and Heritage Commission, and it outlines throughout the process where those community engagement points were. So I just want to dive into what's new in the official community plan and just provide a brief overview of the plan's layout, which has been divided into 6 parts for ease of use. Part 1, this section provides information on the purpose of the plan, the scope, relationship to other plans and policies, and public engagement. Part 2 includes the history of the area, important statistics, and an analysis of current land use. Part 3 presents the community vision and broad goals, which are the guiding principles of this official community plan. Part 4 sets out the objectives and policies of the plan, organized into 10 different land use themes, intended to help guide decision-making in relationship to development and land use in Area I for the next 25 years. Part 5 includes policies for growth management, future land use designations, and policies related to our specific communities in the plan area. And then there's Part 6. This includes the tools that are used to help implement the policies of the official community plan, such as development permits and temporary use permits. Under the Local Government Act, there are topics an official community plan must include statements on. And then there's topics an official community plan may include statements on. An official community plan must include the approximate location, amount, type, and density of residential development required to meet anticipated housing needs over a period of at least 5 years, the approximate location, amount, and type of present and proposed commercial, industrial, institutional, agricultural, recreational, and public utility land uses, the location of sand and gravel deposits that are suitable for future extraction, restrictions on the use of land that is subject to hazardous conditions or that is environmentally sensitive, approximate location and phasing of any major infrastructure projects, approximate location and type of present and proposed public facilities, like schools and parks as an example, and official community plans must also include targets and actions for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in the area covered by the plan. The Local Government Act expressly permits, but does not require, the inclusion of several other matters in an OCP. And these include policies related to social well-being and social development, policies respecting the maintenance and enhancement of farming on land designated for agricultural use, policies relating to the preservation, protection, restoration, and enhancement of the natural environment, its ecosystems, and biological diversity, development approval information areas, development permit areas, and temporary use permits. So as you can see from the plan, we have incorporated a lot of the may into our draft official community plan. So now I just really wanted to highlight some of the key changes proposed in the new Sentinel Mountain official community plan. And these include updated mapping schedules, including new community connections, hazard lands, and aquifer protection development permit area maps, a full redesign, modernization, and reorganization of the community plan, including a new vision and community themes, inclusion of the Castlegar to Nelson Active Transportation Corridor vision, inclusion of a temporary use permit section explaining that temporary commercial and industrial uses only can be considered within the boundary of the plan area through a temporary use permit application, targets for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and policies and actions consistent with the province's legislative requirements, and then new aquifer protection, riparian protection, and wildfire development permit areas to be incorporated into the relevant zoning bylaw for Area I via zoning amendment bylaw number 2968. The addition of development approval information areas to ensure that appropriate and sufficient professionally prepared information guides decision-making on land use applications, and then removal of all applicable references to electoral area I from the Kootenay-Columbia Rivers official community plan via amendment bylaw number 2967. We all know that community input is essential to the official community planning process. So the next slide really pulls together a snapshot of the engagement to date. The overall goal of this engagement process was to facilitate meaningful community involvement in addition to meeting our provincial statutory consultation requirements. A community land use survey was undertaken in 2016. Following the survey, 6 community workshops were held, primarily in 2017, to get community feedback. And then since the relaunch in fall of 2022, 3 new guest advisory planning and heritage commission members were selected by Director Davidoff to provide for enhanced community representation and additional local feedback throughout the duration of the official community plan review project. As I mentioned, a virtual community open house was held in January of 2023 to relaunch the project. And then the planning team hosted 5 in-person kitchen table conversations in the communities of Pass Creek, Glade, Shore Acres Voisin subdivision, Brilliant, and Terry's and Thrums during the first 2 weeks of March 2023. In November of 2023, a community open house was held right here at the Brilliant Cultural Center to present the draft policies proposed in the new Sentinel Mountain official community plan for community feedback. And then, of course, here we are today at our public hearing, the formal input opportunity for your feedback. So I'm just going to provide a high-level summary of what our planning team heard throughout the engagement process. What residents liked: rural character and lifestyle, beautiful landscapes and natural areas, access to outdoor recreational opportunities, farming and local food production, the many special places, Doukhobor settlement areas, capitals, community halls, strong community attachment. What needed attention? Water, quality, quantity, and aquifer vulnerability, limited services and infrastructure, highway safety, lack of public space and community amenities, aging in place, support and programming for youth and seniors, including childcare as an example, creating a diversity of housing options. So what's changed since the adoption of the existing official community plan? And just as a reminder, that plan was adopted in 1996, so approaching 30 years ago. Increased wildfire and flooding events, less housing availability, increased number of people moving here, and reduced community connections. The next few slides really speak to the amendment bylaws that would assist with implementing the proposed new Sentinel Mountain Official Community Plan. As I mentioned a little earlier, the purpose of bylaw number 2967 is really to remove all related references to electoral area I from the existing Kootenay-Columbia Rivers Official Community Plan, which currently applies to both electoral area I and J. So a bit of a housekeeping matter. And then, of course, we have zoning amendment bylaw number 2968. And the purpose of the zoning amendment bylaw is to incorporate the new development permit areas, which I spoke about in our zoning bylaw for Area I. And those new development permit areas include aquifer protection for Shore Acres and Voisin subdivision only, riparian protection, and a development permit for wildfire. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the aquifer protection development permit. This would be for new development only in Shore Acres and Voisin subdivision, and it would be to protect the subsurface aquifer against possible pollution from land use and development activities. It would also be to promote the efficient use of water to ensure a sustainable hydrologic system in the watershed. It would also seek to protect the quality of drinking water supplies, including safeguarding the surface water and groundwater supplies for that particular area, Shore Acres and Voisin subdivision. A little bit about the riparian protection development permit area. This would also be for new development only, and the goal is to preserve and restore riparian areas to enhance the function of their adjacent ecosystems, watercourses, and natural features, to protect biodiversity and ensure landscape connectivity between watercourses and that upland riparian area, to protect water quality and prevent pollution and contamination of watercourses through the preservation and enhancement of riparian areas. And it would also seek to ensure activities within riparian areas are undertaken in a way that is sensitive to the natural environment and encourages shoreline stewardship. The wildfire development permit would seek to achieve, for new development only, in its implementation, to prevent personal injury and property loss, to protect structures from damage, to ensure stable and accessible building sites, and to increase the community's resilience to wildfire hazards and climate change by reducing wildfire impacts as part of the land development process. This slide speaks to the referral process. To update you all, the draft plan was sent out on referral over the summer, that was July and August of 2024, to external agencies, the public, and internal regional district departments for comment. After the referral period closed, these comments were reviewed and then used to update the OCP document and related amending bylaws before the RDCK board considered first initial readings of the bylaws and then directed staff to coordinate the scheduling of a public hearing. And that occurred at the December board meeting of 2024. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about next steps. The public hearing minutes and a summary report will be going to the next relevant board meeting. At that meeting, the board could consider a third reading and adoption of the official community plan and related amendment bylaws. And then if the board supported approval, staff would proceed with implementation of the official community plan through strategies, ongoing planning, partnerships, and monitoring efforts. And of course, we'd reach out to do a debrief and thank you to all of our community participants and stakeholders. And now I just wanted to speak a little bit and summarize the written submissions we did receive prior to 4 p.m. Today. The public hearing notices were all mailed out to every household in electoral area I, inviting residents to participate in tonight's public hearing. In addition to the notice of the public hearing, through the mail-out, an ad was placed in the Castlegar News with ads running in the January 23rd and January 30th editions. And then also an additional ad was placed today in the February 6th edition. I can summarize that prior to 4 p.m., we received 22 written submissions as a result of that notification. These letters will be provided to the regional board as part of the public hearing summary and staff report package that I talked about on my previous slide, which will also include the minutes of the public hearing. The written submissions are available to the public in the public hearing binders on the table at the entrance of our room here in person, or by QR code, also available on the tables. And to our folks attending online, the submissions are available along with the public hearing package on the Regional District's website for the project. That's the Area I Official Community Plan Review project page, and they can be found under the public hearing written submissions link on that page. So I'm going to read out who the submissions are from and offer a brief outline of their comments. If the authors to the written submissions are present, they're invited to speak to their submission when the chair opens the floor, should they choose. And so I'll just go through those submissions and summarize. We received a submission from Bill Chapman, a resident in Terry's. He outlined that he had grave concerns about the plan to build a bike route between Nelson and Castlegar. We are not anti-bicycle by any means, but they are aware that motor vehicle and cyclist interaction has been hugely studied, and in their experience, the proponents of the bike path had not done enough comprehensive literature review, and the effects of a dedicated bike lane are complex, and that accidents happen most frequently at the intersection of bike lanes and motor vehicle routes. So when bicyclists are on roads and behaving in predictable ways, the frequency of accidental interaction is lower. Please consider improving cycling and driving conditions along the Nelson-Castlegar route. We need better signage, clearly demarcated bicycle-friendly shoulders, and a massive education program to teach cyclists and motorists how to interact. The costs of a dedicated bike route are completely out of proportion to the number of people who will use this route. The next submission is from Jen Mayer. Jen commented that it was her understanding that this community plan is being refreshed and is meant to guide decisions on planning and land use management by capturing the vision of our communities. However, the community concerned does not seem to have the option to vote on this plan. The next submission was from Matt Gagor, who had many questions about the official community plan process. When did the community approach you and ask to develop a plan for us? When is the vote by the community approving your plan? As a resident and business owner, I never asked for this, nor do I want this. You have to turn on.
Yeah. Can we have order, please, during this presentation? You will be allowed to speak during question period. Thank you.
The next submission is from Yvonne Patterson, a resident of Glade. Overall, I'm pleased with the adjustments and updates made to this plan and would like to emphasize the following as key points that are of importance to me. Active transportation corridor. My family is in great favor of this and believe that it should become a major priority for our communities in Area I. Wildfire preparedness and resiliency. This is a major concern for many in the community, with the advent of each summer's wildfire season making us wonder if we will be the next area devastated by effects of fires and evacuations. Ecological stewardship. There is some discussion around habitat and wildlife stewardship and protections, which I'm glad to see. However, I feel more could be done to facilitate coexistence for living with wildlife, particularly bears. In addition to these considerations for wildlife, I would also like to raise a point about issues with increasing numbers of rats that are causing damage to properties and most certainly negatively impacting bird populations. This submission is from Johan Kron. I would like to express my concerns with the proposed planned section of bicycle route from Tagum to Bonington. The next submission is from Curtis Van Weiserloo, a resident of Shore Acres. Curtis feels an addition to the official community plan of adding a community-wide sewer treatment facility would be extremely beneficial. He has concerns about the aging and out-of-date septic systems and the impact on groundwater in the area. He outlines that most residences use this groundwater for drinking and other domestic purposes. Curtis also had major problems with regards to horticulture allowance in country residential areas, recognizing that there could be dust concerns, rotting vegetables in the off-season, and also contamination of groundwater with farming chemicals and loads of manure. Curtis also attached a survey from the Shore Acres Neighborhood Community Association. The next submission is from Cindy McCallum Miller and Joanne Miller, residents of Thrums. I read the entire plan that you sent to me, and I was very impressed with the thoroughness and inclusiveness of the plan. I am so pleased that you included a non-vehicle transportation plan for those of us who cannot drive or who cannot afford a vehicle or more than one vehicle in a household. I love the fact that you captured the desire to maintain rural character, address future development to reflect the fact that we don't want quasi-urban sprawl, and that the agricultural component of life out here is vital. I took from the plan that the RDCK supports moderate development with restrictions, plans for better and equal access to our parks and transportation, emphasizes being responsible stewards of the land. The next submission is from Laura Sachs, a resident of Glade. Thank you for all the work over the years to update the official community plan for Area I. It is a comprehensive document that will guide and prepare our Sentinel Mountain communities for 21st century challenges and opportunities. One thing specifically I want to mention is my support for more transportation options for our area, including an active transportation corridor connecting us to Castlegar, Nelson, and the Slocan Valley. Our property is right off the highway, and I rarely cycle from home because I don't feel safe sharing the highway with large trucks and speeding cars. The next submission is from Moss Giason, Area I resident. Gison, thank you. My apologies. I'm writing to share with you my support of this official community plan update currently underway. This community has changed over the years. It is particularly important to reflect these plans on the community of today and what we want this area to look like moving into the future, and to support our children and future community members. I'm very supportive of the initiatives that are focused on our growing and changing community, including climate action initiatives. I also want to voice my support for improving alternative ways of connecting our rural communities with off-highway pathways. This is a written submission from Brendan Wilson, a resident of Shore Acres. I wanted to add my support to the active transportation corridor between Nelson Castlegar and hopefully others. this proposed corridor would improve my and everyone else's safety and enjoyment. This submission is from Fraser McKinnon. Fraser outlined concerns with a particular vacant parcel located on the mountain at Terry's Creek, and had concerns. It's a currently vacant parcel, and had concerns about its future development as it's designated rural residential in the draft plan. It's on the hazard lands map, and the majority of the parcel shows to be greater than 40% grade. Fraser outlined that he's got concerns with the development of the parcel that would further impact the water supply in the area and possibly render our water system inoperable. Fraser also outlined concerns with the bike lane route planning and had concerns with strangers traveling through my very private residential area. The next submission's from Darcy McKinnon, also of Terry's Creek. In regards to the same vacant parcel, there was concerns that it should be remain undeveloped due to landslides and potential flooding. The next submission is from Christina Mailcow, a Shore Acres resident. She's in very strong support of a bike lane. The current conditions are unsafe for bike traffic in many sections. The next submission is from Kate Enwold. And Kate outlines concerns also about the transportation corridor between Castlegar and Nelson. And she also had concerns about section 4.10.4 that it should be removed, speaking about what an official community plan is, a statement of objectives and policies. The next submission is from Darcy McKinnon. Darcy comments that the new bike lane should run along the side of the CPR tracks. The next submission is from Dan Rywazik. Dan is strongly opposed to the active transportation corridor. It's an idea and should stay as one. We don't have yet a functioning airport. The next submission is from Victor Jamaev. Victor is a resident and landowner in Shore Acres, having resided there for 34 years. His comments generally pertain to Shore Acres. Comments in general relate to affordability and cost of living becoming a major concern with no or minimal sign of improvement. The new draft OCP adds more regulation and uncertainty, whereas should not the new OCP be focused on reducing regulation, encouraging investment, and facilitating landowners' ability to maintain and improve. The new draft OCP should be focused on facilitating development versus detracting new development. The next submission is from Blake Sorrell, a resident of Glade. Blake outlines concerns related to protecting Glade Creek and riparian zones and recreation lands being improperly managed, resulting in negative impacts to Glade and the surrounding environment. Blade's other concerns relate to First Nations and their review of the draft plan. And then also funding to enforce violations and the ability, should these occur, how are they held accountable for environmental damages? Now, as you all know, we do redact personal information from these submissions, and this one in particular came close to 4 p.m. when I was en route to this facility. So unfortunately, the name has been redacted, but I will read the submission. So I apologize about that, but we will have this individual's name available when it forms part of the board report package. Thank you for the opportunity to submit our statement. The RDCK board should not approve third reading of the OCP. Our concerns arise from sections that have not been included that do not reflect residents' feedback under section 2.5 community themes. Specifically, climate mitigation and energy, and the addition of a plan called Nelson to Castlegar Active Transportation Corridor Vision, which was not approved by the RDCK board in September of 2024. The next submission is from Kieran Lindley. Kieran feels that the bylaw and proposed amendments are not necessary and are frankly overreaching, especially related to adaptation of carbon pollution reduction initiatives. There's a fear that this will increase costs of development. We should not be expanding our road infrastructure for more vehicles that will be using our road as the population grows, we should be expanding our road infrastructure for more vehicles that will be using our roads as population grows, not putting infrastructure for bicycles. I oppose most of the amendments and changes. And that completes my summary of the written statements.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The staff also spoke with me, and I've seen all these submissions because they've all been copied to me as well. Just a couple of notes before we go to question period. There are a lot of submissions with respect to the active transportation corridor, so we just wanted to provide some clarity as to why it's in the plan. So running parallel to the area IOCP review process was the Castlegar to Nelson Active Transportation Corridor Visioning Study, which was in partnership with the West Kootenay Cycling Coalition and the RDCK. We heard through the OCP community engagement process that there was support for the inclusion of an active transportation corridor. Based on positive community feedback at these OCP sessions and timing of completed corridors visioning plan, a conceptual route and related supportive policies were incorporated into the proposed mapping and text of the new OCP for Area I. This is a concept, and the effect of the OCP does not commit or authorize a local government to proceed with any project that is specified in the plan, and that's under the Local Government Act Section 488(1). In addition to that, the OCP has a statement in the objectives under transportation and connectivity, which says that an active transportation corridor will take into account fiscal viability and practicality of projects. The climate section in the official community plan is to meet provincial regulations as pursuant to legal advice. This had to be included to include specific targets and actions. So those are two just clarifying comments that I'll make. So everything's ready to go? Okay. So I'll just go back to So now that the staff presentation is concluded, I will ask if there are any questions prior to opening the floor to formal submissions. Once the question period has ended, we will move forward with formal submissions. You do not need to provide your name at this time, but when you make a formal submission, you will have to provide your name. For online attendees who would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand icon under the React icon at the bottom of the screen. Staff will then unmute you in Zoom. Please accept the unmute notification that then appears on your screen as your time to speak, and we'll be very patient with this to make sure that we're working, everything's working properly. So it is question time. So please, if you could come up to the mic so that everyone can hear your question, and we'll just take you in the order that you're standing in the line. And this is not formal submission time. This is question time. The formal submission time is to follow. So please make sure that you're asking a question. So please proceed.
Yes, Mr. Davidoff. My name is Al Lewis, and I'm from Shore Acres. And I just had a question, a further question on the Active Transportation Corridor Vision. In the last two meetings I've been at, one here, one in Terry's Hall, I don't even know if this was on the agenda, or if it was fairly well hidden, because I didn't see it. And there was certainly no mention of the
Okay, so you're making,
cost.
yeah, so just you're going into a submission. So what is your question, Al?
Okay, my question is, has there been any thought given to someplace else this bike path could go? What about the east side of the river, coming from Nelson through Blewett, above the Kootenay Canal, and there's an existing path right now that could be improved down to Glade, and from there into Nelson. Has anything been given to that? Because
Thanks, Al, because you stated your question. So that's why you see where the explanation was provided. So the staff have any response to the question?
Thank you. The response to the question, has there been any alternative routes being looked at, if I'm summarizing it correctly?
Yep.
As Chair Davidoff mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, there was a feasibility study completed in partnership with the West Kootenay Cycling Coalition and the Regional District, which was running parallel to this planning process. Within that feasibility study, the engineering firm hired did look at a variety of routing options. They actually came out and cycled the duration of the corridor between Castlegar and Nelson, and that is in the final Castlegar to Nelson active transportation corridor. That vision plan, that document outlines everything involved in that planning process, where they would have looked at some alternative routes.
did they look?
So as chair, I just want to make it,
Yes.
Al, if you just bear with me for a sec. What I will do is, you can ask your question, and I'll allow one supplemental for
All right.
each person, because we may have a lot of questions. So your supplemental, please.
All right. Your explanation didn't say anything about the possibility of a route on the east side of the river. My second question, if this corridor were to go along the 3A highway, where would it possibly cross the Slocan River?
Does staff have a response to that supplemental question?
Are you going to build a
Oh, yeah,
bridge?
we've got,
Okay.
that got your question, Al. Go ahead.
Thank you. The corridor vision included in the community connection map in the Sentinel Mountain Official Community Plan took the recommendation from that particular feasibility study from the engineering consulting team. So we used the final product, the final corridor vision, and that's the vision that we included in the Sentinel Mountain Official Community Plan.
But you haven't
Al,
answered my question.
Al,
I know, Andy, but nevertheless, she said a lot here, but she has not answered the question. Where would that cross the Slocan River? Please answer the question if you know it.
Al,
If you don't, say I don't know.
Al, the key thing is that I'm going to repeat what I said. This is a concept. The details are not completed yet, and the bottom line is that the effect of the OCP, which is the point of today's meeting, does not commit or authorize a local government to proceed with any project. There's a lot more work to be done on this, and the key thing is we're here to address the OCP, and this is not a meeting on the active transportation corridor and visioning study.
It will be tonight. It will
Okay,
be.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Next speaker, please.
Okay,
So one question and a supplemental, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Will the 25-meter setback rule be changed so the strip farms can actually be farmed along the corridor. There's a lot of farms that are 49 meters across. You take the 25 meters from both sides, that place can't be farmed. You got 7, 8 acres stretched up the mountain, it's totally unfarmable. I brought this up at a previous meeting. I just want to know if that setback rule is going to be changed. And can I do my supplemental question?
No, that's your question, and then you can do a supplemental after you get a response from staff. Can staff respond to this today?
Thank you. I guess I'd be looking for just a little more clarification about the 25 meters setback requirement, and I'm just wondering if this is something you found in the official community plan or perhaps the land use regulations in the zoning bylaw?
It's the land use regulation zoning bylaw.
Okay, so staff would be happy to connect with you outside of this public hearing to talk about that in relation to the zoning bylaw, which is not part of this public hearing process.
Okay, do you have a supplemental?
Okay, can I carry on with that brief
Yeah.
conversation? In that you say that the planning process is to encourage farming, then encourage farming.
Okay, that's a submission, so if you have a
Okay.
question, supplemental,
Okay,
please.
next question. Will the regional district stop spraying Roundup on the vegetation, the blackberries that are growing along the road? The product they're using is Roundup. It gets in the water, it's a carcinogen, and when people talk about farm chemicals and stuff, and the government is spraying for invasive weeds, mass spraying of Roundup, and that gets in our water, and we know it now that it's a carcinogen. Will you stop that?
Does staff, thank you very much. Does staff have a response to that? Okay, so that is, staff has advised that is not in our RDCK jurisdiction. We have no knowledge of in the planning services. So basically, planning staff are not prepared to address that. However, they would take it offline for the speaker to contact the RDCK staff, the appropriate staff. Thank you. So now this is really good because what we did here, you had questions, but then you also, I could see that you really want to make a submission as well. So that's during the formal submission period, then you can come back up and make a formal submission on the items that you spoke to, the questions you asked. So even though staff can address something, planning staff can address something, that doesn't mean that you can't make a formal submission saying that you would like to see this addressed. So, you know, and I'll allow some leeway on this. It's not specifically directed at the OCP, but I'll allow some leeway. Thank you. Okay, who's next? Oh, thank you.
Hi. In your submission, or whatever you want to call it, the OCP, you speak about reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and targets. Can you elaborate more in layman's terms as to exactly what that means and how that will be accomplished?
Okay, do staff have a response? Okay, let's give us a minute, please. You're looking at 31.
Thank you for your question. The section I'm looking at is 4.10, climate mitigation and energy, 4.10.2, which is greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets. So part of the approach to achieve those targets and actions, if I heard your question correctly, that the regional board would undertake is to work collaboratively with our partners and interested community members to help reduce carbon pollution in the rural areas, to foster the development of renewable energy supply options as established in the board's commitment to 100% renewable energy by 2050. Some of the related policies to help support climate mitigation and energy, the proposed policies in the plan. The regional board encourages the reduction of landfill waste through the RDCK zero waste policy, supports collaboration with and supports partners that raise awareness and provide education on energy and emissions to local businesses, residents, and other organizations in the community, encourages energy efficient retrofits of older buildings, including both residential and commercial buildings, encourages the use of local materials and green building techniques in new and retrofitted developments, supports a voluntary reduction of personal vehicle transportation emissions by promoting the use of public transit and shared transit, including the use of buses, car cooperatives, and delivery services, more efficient vehicles, use of alternative fuels, providing sufficient pedestrian and cycling facilities and routes, encouraging home-based businesses, and encouraging changes in travel patterns. Supports the expansion and enhancement of electric vehicle charging stations and infrastructure throughout the region through the Accelerate Kootenays program, supports the exploration of renewable energy opportunities in the agricultural and forestry industries, such as biomass energy production, supports the creation of a renewable energy service for the RDCK, and encourages identification, establishment, and maintenance of natural and managed carbon sinks for the purposes of conservation, maintenance of biodiversity, and enhanced community resilience with consideration to local ecosystem values and socioeconomic drivers.
Thank you. Do you have a supplemental question?
That was quite the word salad and not really in layman's terms, but one thing from there is the voluntary reduction of personal vehicle use. What exactly does that mean? We live rural for a reason. We have our vehicles for a reason.
Okay, so you're making a submission, and please save your submission for
I
the
asked
formal.
my question, what
Yeah.
does the reduction of personal vehicle use actually mean?
I think the plain words speak for themselves.
I think the reduction of vehicle use is a choice that area residents can make. As I mentioned, it's voluntary, and so they can choose to use a vehicle or alternative options to using a vehicle.
Thank you. Next person to ask a question. Okay, do we have any further questions? I will wait. Okay, here we go.
Got a couple.
Thank you.
So we're experiencing a very cold January and February. My question is water related. I've lived on the Kootenay River my whole life, and I'm wondering why the Kootenay River isn't freezing. Not a tiny little bit, nothing on the shore. And I don't know if anybody's ever noticed that. The Slocan River freezes.
Okay, so you're making a
My question
is, yeah, thank you.
Can you tell me why, or could you find out why the Kootenay River is not freezing?
Okay, that's beyond the scope of the OCP
Okay.
plan. That's a question that could be asked to staff, different staff, and I don't know if they'd have an answer for that, which is a pretty open question. So do you have a supplemental
No,
question?
that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next speaker. Quite good evening.
It's a great plan and everything, but acquisition of properties, I have an issue with that. We have existing transportation. Can't we enhance it so we have better bus
Okay,
service?
so you're making a formal submission right now?
Is that a formal submission?
Yeah, save that for the formal submission,
Okay.
but do you have a question?
I just think we're still missing some stuff. in
Okay,
the-
and that's the formal
Okay,
submission
yeah,
part,
all right.
okay?
And to answer your question why it doesn't freeze, they're always sucking the water down and raising it up Kootenai Canal
Okay.
and BC Hydro.
Thank you. I hope the previous speaker has received the answer, but thank you very much. Any further questions? Yeah, please, thank you.
So I'm.
Okay,
Question.
order, just hang on a second. We'll just wait till there's order and then we'll proceed. Thank you. Go ahead.
Just some clarification or maybe a question under 4.1.2, so page 14, number 9, it says does not support the use of housing as short-term rental. And then on page 17, under home-based business and.
Okay, are these two separate?
I'm just asking a clarifying question. There's 2 points that conflict in my
Okay.
mind, so I'm just asking which
Okay.
one is true, or if they're both true, explain to me.
Okay, can you repeat, so on
So page 14,
page 14?
number 9, does not support the use of housing as short-term rentals. Then page 17, under home-based business and accessory tourist accommodation, number 3, up at the very top of page 17, will provide for accessory tourist accommodation as a secondary use to residents in the form of a bed and breakfast operations and camping facility. So to me, a bed and breakfast is short-term rental.
Yeah. So staff, do you have a response to the conflict that the speaker has perceived?
Thank you. Hopefully to clarify, the regional district zoning bylaw for Area I has land use regulations that define a bed and breakfast operation differently from a short-term rental. And so the proposed policies in the official community plan would be consistent with our existing land use regulations.
Okay. Do you have,
So can I-
do you have a supplemental question?
So is it okay or not?
To make sure that I've heard you correctly, are you asking staff if a short-term rental is okay?
If I called it a bed and breakfast?
The definition in our zoning bylaw differentiates between a bed and breakfast and a short-term rental accommodation. Generally speaking, in zoning bylaw 1675, which provides land use regulations for electoral areas F, I, J, and K, by and large, short-term rentals are not permitted in our land use regulations. Bed and breakfasts are. There is a definition in the zoning bylaw for bed and breakfasts, which would be different from your typical short-term rental.
Okay, so I just looked the definition up of a short-term rental versus a bed and breakfast.
Your mic.
Thank you.
Okay.
You can have a look at our zoning bylaw interpretation section, which is essentially definitions, and any member of our planning team would be happy to provide you with more information related to your question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions? Yes, I'll get that in a sec. So the people waiting online, you will have the opportunity to ask your questions once we finish with the questions on with the in-person segment of this. Please, George.
First of all, I'd like to commend the committee on all the work you've done the last couple of decades.
Okay, that would be very appropriate in the formal submission phase.
Well, I appreciate all of the position on the committee to sort of maintain and respect the beauty and the natural beauty of our area, especially the Brilliant area. As a long time and permanent resident of this area, I have some concern regarding...
So George, this is submission. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I have some concern regarding the economic activity in the old co-op area. Many of us residents in Brilliant go there for a walk, and recently we've noticed a lot of smells coming from that industry. I think it might be coming from the Dynamic group that's occupying
Okay, George,
the area by the co-op.
what is your question?
What can we do as residents of this area to eliminate the toxic fouling of our backyard?
Okay, so that is more a bylaw department question. So you could contact the RDCK number and ask for bylaw enforcement, because that's more of a bylaw enforcement question, not a planning staff question?
Sure, and if I can just ask one more question.
Yes,
If
supplemental?
Yes, if the industry that's located there has the right to carry on with that activity according to the bylaws. for that
Okay, so that
region.
again is a bylaw enforcement question, not a planning department, unless I'm missing something? Because you don't know exactly what that property zoning is?
Thank you. Planning staff would be happy to meet offline outside of this meeting to learn more about the situation you're talking about and whether there's any planning implications. And of course, we'd be happy to help connect you with our bylaw enforcement team as well.
Okay, could I expect that done from you? And,
Yeah, George, you just
a process to go
you
in?
need to contact, after the meeting, you can leave contact info for someone to get a hold of you.
All right, thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you very much. Okay, any other questions from the floor before we go to the online questions? Okay, we have one more person coming up.
So I'm wondering about the mandatory section that you guys talk about. What piece of legislation or governing body determines that that is mandatory? For instance, the environmental end of it.
Okay,
Thank you. It's the province through the Local Government Act, and that Local Government Act dictates how municipalities and regional districts are to operate. For this particular official community plan, there's a certain section within the Local Government Act which outlines what must be included in the plan and then what may be included.
supplemental?
Does this have anything to do with the Paris Accord?
Would staff like to answer that question?
The province of BC crafted the Local Government Act. I was not involved in the crafting of that Local Government Act, so perhaps that's a question better directed to the province. It's my understanding that the Local Government Act stands alone and is not connected to the Paris Accord you mentioned.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I will call, oh, here we go.
I would just like to know if property owners were also involved in the study, the feasibility study for the bike trail or the corridor.
You want to address
There was
that?
the cycling club and then
Yep.
the RDCK, but were property owners also involved?
Will staff want to address that or not?
I can speak to that generally. I know that you had mentioned the West Kootenay Cycling Coalition and that feasibility study for the Castlegar to Nelson Active Transportation Corridor. Many of you in the room may be familiar with some of the open houses that they held throughout all of the communities between Castlegar and Nelson. And I surmise that would have been the way for interested property owners to attend those sessions. As for conversations with individual property owners, I wouldn't be able to speak to that. I don't know.
Do you have a supplemental?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, here we go.
This question is related to clear, honest communication to actually allow for community engagement. Have you read George Orwell's essay, Politics and the English Language?
Okay,
Because if you haven't, you would do well to
I
read
would
it.
suggest thank you, that question is probably not appropriate for this session. Order, please. Thank you. Next question on the floor.
How many people are in the cycling club?
Hey, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take any more questions on cycling club
Why?
because
They're the
that's not what this meeting's about. And that's an unfair question for staff because they're not prepared for those questions. So if you have a formal submission to make during the formal submission portion, you can say your piece. Thank you. Okay, any other questions on the floor? Yeah, I see you. Thank you. Come up, please. And thank you, everyone, for being respectful. It's really appreciated.
I'm not sure if I should be answering it here or the other one. So it was my
Okay, you're answering someone else's question?
Well, no, I just want to ask one question.
Okay.
It was my understanding that the community would vote on this, but I'm getting because I didn't live here from when this all started. So now I have the indication that the directors only vote on it. Is that the case?
Staff can clarify that, the process?
Thank you for that question. So I touched on it in my presentation about next steps. So this is the formal public hearing, the final input point on this official community plan project. And after the adjournment of this public hearing, the next step would be bringing the minutes of this public hearing, all written submissions, and a summary staff report package to our regional board at the next relevant meeting. The regional board meets monthly, mid-month, and then ultimately, you are correct, it's the regional board, our elected officials at the regional district, that would make a decision on whether or not to eventually adopt or support the official community plan.
Supplemental?
But it's this whole area with the residents. Why shouldn't the residents vote on it?
Okay, staff can address that.
No.
Yeah, just speak loudly. Nelson. Oh, Michael, have you got the mic on? Okay.
Testing.
There we go. Thank you.
The way I'd respond to that question is that OCPs are intended to be community-driven. So the input comes from the community in terms of the content that then gets drafted. So that input that was provided, Stephanie touched on it in her presentation about all the public engagement work that we did in the community. So that would be the opportunity for input. It's true, the ultimate decision is made by the elected officials, and you also have representation on that board table from your area director. But you as a resident are not voting on this particular plan. The elected officials that you voted into office would be doing that work.
So I have to go to...
So thank you.
Is that...
You've answered the question. I will be addressing, I think there was a procedural piece there. I will be addressing what happens after this public hearing concludes today, and the process is in the, I'll be speaking to that. Okay, please.
My question is specifically at what will be the date of the board meeting where this will be presented for a vote, and are we as a community invited to go to that meeting?
Okay, order please. Okay, go ahead. Steph.
Thank you for that question. Depending on the outcome and the feedback received at this meeting, there may be changes we're making to the draft official community plan or related amending bylaws. So to some extent, I don't have that crystal ball. I think the next applicable meeting that we could get the official community plan and related amending bylaws on the agenda for the board to consider would be March, and that's a mid-March meeting. Unfortunately, I don't have the calendar on my screen.
I have the date.
And if not to that March meeting, which Director Davidoff is pulling up right now, then I would look to the April meeting.
March 20th.
It's the March 20th meeting. So that's the meeting we would be looking to target. And if not March, then more than likely would be the April board meeting.
Okay, next question, please.
My question is directly around the community corridor. When this was requested to be implemented as something to improve our community, why was it specifically between Castlegar and Nelson? And were there any other areas that this corridor could be implemented rather than area I through to Nelson?
Is staff prepared to address that or not?
Thank you. I don't have the specifics as to why. I do know that the West Kootenay Cycling Coalition approached the regional district, and the regional district partnered with the West Kootenay Cycling Coalition to undertake that feasibility study for the corridor by applying and receiving grant funding from Infrastructure Canada. And the corridor in that feasibility study runs from Castlegar to Nelson, as you mentioned, and also passes through several other electoral areas. We just happen to be going through here in electoral area I, a review of our official community plan. It also passes through electoral area J, F, and E, as well as the municipalities of Castlegar and Nelson.
Supplemental?
My additional question to that is that you understand we have Highway 3A that runs in various directions. Corridors can go through multiple avenues. It does not necessarily need to be through our area.
Okay, so that is
My question for
yep,
you
okay.
is, why can this not go over the Bombi, go through Selmo to Nelson, where it's not affecting so many people?
Okay, thank you. Nelson, please.
Yeah, I'll do my best to try and respond to that, and maybe also to the first question too. One response I would provide is need. So we heard expressed from the community a need for better alternatives to vehicle use. And that means transit options and also what's called like that last mile to get from the bus to your house. And a lot of that infrastructure just wasn't built. We've been very focused in the last however many decades on vehicle infrastructure only. And what's been missing is that opportunity for other modes of transportation. You maybe pointed out to other areas of this region, and some of those things do exist happily because there's old rail trails that could be used for that purpose, up the Slocan Valley or the other one, say, from Nelson to Selmo. What's missing, that's really not in place in this area, so that's why there's a need that was observed, and that's why the response, I think, from the Cycling Coalition to address that particular corridor was because it's really missing there, and the safe alternatives for non-vehicle transportation don't really exist.
Thank you very much, and you've had your two questions. Thank you very much. Next speaker. Is there anyone else before we go to the online questions? Yeah, here we go.
I just had a question. The Cycling Coalition, are any of them residents of Area I?
The staff want to, again,
Again, we have no knowledge of who's on that. I think you should direct that question to that Cycling Coalition.
Yep.
We certainly did appreciate the partnership that they formed with us to do that investigation.
So in the long run, it doesn't cost them anything out of their pocket, out of their taxes.
Okay, so that's the submission piece. Okay. That's not a question. Okay, just wait for submissions. Is there anybody else with a question before we go with the online questions? Are you coming up to the mic? Person walking right now? No. Okay, so it's hard for me to see. These lights are really bright. Oh, there we go. We've got someone. Yep, please ask your question.
With regards to the bike trail, I'm not really all that familiar with it, but can you make available to the public statistics on how many cyclists are currently driving down the corridor on their bikes? Because I live right along the highway, I rarely see a bicycle.
Okay, so again, a question to staff, would that be in the active transportation study? I think you need to follow up with staff afterwards to see if there's anything in the active transportation study. And that thing is that because of all these questions, I think staff, I don't know how we do this, but the key thing is because of so many questions, the link to the study is what you need, and maybe come see staff after, and they'll give you the link, And staff is available to provide the link to the study so that you could see exactly what the study is and isn't. So does that help?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because
Yeah.
within
Yeah, I think you need to
they
look.
count traffic, right?
Yeah.
So has that been done, do you know, or?
Staff's not prepared to answer that right now, but,
Okay.
but see staff, and then maybe it's in the report, okay?
Maybe. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, further questions? Yeah, here we go.
Do you guys, I'm new to this here right now, just getting into it. I missed last year, whenever you guys did it previously. So what's it going to cost what's it going to cost our, as homeowners here? Do you guys have a idea what how much our property taxes are going to go up for this type of
Okay,
planning?
so basically, the budget meetings are going to be happening, RDCK budget meetings, and you will have an opportunity when you come to the budget meetings to ask any questions related to taxation. That's not today's meeting, but there will be a budget meeting coming up, and I have the date, or not yet. The date is being set for our budget meeting.
Okay, one more question.
Yep.
So this seems like a large undertaking. Is Regional District having to man up for this? Are you guys hiring more people?
Okay, are
for
you
something like this?
speaking, what exactly are you speaking to? The transport?
Well, I'm just saying here, this is a large project here. Is Regional District, do they have to hire additional personnel for this?
Okay, are you speaking to the active transportation corridor or the OCP process?
Well, the OCP here, it sounds like the traffic plan is part of this, correct? Am I missing it, or is it part of the plan?
Okay, again, there's nothing that we're aware of in the budget right now, and that's a budget question. And that's where you need to ask that question, unless Nelson's got something to add.
Now, when is this meeting, or you don't know yet?
The meeting date, I'll check. See my handy dandy pocket book here. We were just canvassed for dates for the budget meeting. We have a board special budget meeting on the 21st of February. The public budget meeting it's not been set. I don't have that yet, but that will be advertised once that's set. Right now, I don't have that date.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. You've had your two questions. Anyone else speaking? Thank you. With a question.
Hi, I just didn't hear the answer to Kate's second question. If the public was able to attend the March 20th meeting or the April meeting.
Yes, all those meetings are public meetings.
Okay.
Yep. They're public meetings, and there's a in-person and online, and because the boardroom is so small, online might be preferable because you can't fit everybody into the boardroom. There is a room on the other side of the in the hall, next to the board office or across from the board office entrance. But basically, it's up to you. You can come in person, but it's limited space. Online, you can also participate that way. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else with questions?
Hi there.
Hi.
I got a question around the mapping in the Pass Creek area specifically. I'm just unclear whether, when I looked at the mapping for current use, it didn't seem to accurately reflect a lot of the zoning that's on the specific zoning RDCK map. It showed general land use as I understand, but when compared to the future land uses, those didn't really seem to make much sense either as far as how they relate to current zoning of specific properties. So I guess my question is, are there properties which will be rezoned or areas which will be rezoned in the official community plan? Is the future planning map showing zoning changes, or is it just showing sort of general land use objectives?
Yeah. So your question, I think, if I paraphrase it, there is a map attached to the official community plan on existing land use, and then there's a map for future land use. And is your question?
Well, my question is both that the existing land use map doesn't seem to jive exactly with the map that fully shows individual zonings, which I guess I understand it's meant to be a more general overview of what these lands, what land types are meant to be used for. But in the future usage, is it showing broad zoning changes, or because the two maps clearly aren't the same? So I just didn't know.
Yeah, I think staff gets the question, and could staff respond, please?
Thank you for that question. So in my presentation, when I outlined the musts that we should include in our official community plan, we must include an existing land use map. That's Schedule A1. And that mapping is actually based off of BC assessment data for actually on the ground land uses occurring, and that's from BC assessment. The future land use map really is an update and modernization of what's existing now in the Kootenay-Columbia Rivers official community plan, which is different from, I heard you mention zoning as an example. The zoning information is an entirely different map, which is not forming part of the official community plan, but of course there's a relationship between an official community plan and the zoning bylaw, and the zoning bylaw is where a lot of planners like to say that's where the official community plan is implemented, and that zoning bylaw, as you may be aware, is a regulatory tool which is very specific about land use, density, building sites, setbacks, what have you.
Okay, supplemental?
Okay, so just to confirm then, the official community plan doesn't include any specific rezoning of properties or areas?
To confirm, that is correct.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify as well, when we did this before in the mid-90s, we concurrently did the overarching goals and we did zoning at the same time. The zoning piece is still to be completed when it comes. This is just the overarching goals. Okay, more questions, please?
Coming up as a resident, of course. Something I heard I didn't hear before was kind of new to me, is that the OCP includes sections that are required by the government. So a question for you, Andy, as a representative, elected regional representative for the area, and all of your directors, is there any government influence on you and your fellow directors from the government to ensure a new OCP plan comes in? And the reason I'm asking that question is it's a bit of a pity that the government forces elements of the OCP on us as a community, and there might be some really nice elements in that OCP, but as a community we might feel strongly we don't want those government interventions or clauses in there, so we're going to be working hard to vote it all down and throwing out some beautiful elements because we don't agree with what the government is forcing you guys to include. So is there any influence on the directors from the provincial government to push for a new OCP?
Okay, so I spoke at the beginning about impartiality, so I'm not going to comment on the OCP, but I will comment on the legislation that higher orders of government pass that severely impact us greatly. I'll just leave it at that. And as a director, have we been we need to deal, and staff has to deal with a lot of offloading and downloading. So that's as far as I'm going to go. But I cannot comment on the OCP because I can't do that here because I need to be impartial. So yes, to your question, we have to comply with government regulations, regardless of how we feel about them.
So will your vote, if the majority of your regional members, your community, request to vote down, will you vote the OCP down?
That would be contrary to the rules about predetermination for any vote at the board table. Each director is supposed to be open-minded, impartial, look at all of the submissions, all of the, which we haven't heard yet, and then every director votes independently on whether or not they believe the plan or the bylaw should proceed further. That's how it works. Thank you. Okay, any more questions? Okay.
It's my understanding that this is a community-driven plan.
That's your question?
That's what Stephanie said earlier, it's a community plan.
That's correct. It's community-driven.
Then why is the board of directors voting instead of not residents?
Okay, so I can address that. We spent 9 years in this process. 9 years. We started in 2016. We started it with a survey in 2019. This is just process, not content. Basically, the community has provided its input, is doing that today. Ultimately, under the provisions of the Local Government Act, it is the board of directors that votes on that, this isn't a referendum process.
If area
do you have
are
a supplemental?
Directly impacted,
Yeah.
then it should be area residents that make the decisions.
Okay, I think I explained that under the Local Government Act, this is not a referendum process. The community feedback happened over the 9 years, and now the board will be making a decision once everything is reviewed, all submissions are reviewed. If you have a comment, a submission to make during the formal submission phase, then you can make that there about process.
But Stephanie already said that the information, and you said, is coming
okay,
from the higher up governments.
Okay, you're making a submission now. Please save that to the formal submission part of the meeting, okay? Thank you. Okay, any more questions? Okay, seeing that we don't have any further questions here, we will go to online questions. Do we have anyone online who's tracking that? Laura, is that you? Or is it Nelson? Okay, so I will ask 3 times. Is there anyone online that has a question? Please raise your hand so that you can be unmuted, correct? So that's asked once. Twice, is there anyone online that has a question to ask? Is there anybody? Nelson? Okay, no hands. And the third and last time, is there anyone online that has a question to ask? Okay, and we have no technical issues, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do we have anyone on, yeah, let's test the system, make sure that we have no technical issues. So Sangeeta online, can we ask her? Okay. Yeah, I know.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Sangeeta. So do you have any difficulties hearing us and hearing my 3 requests for online questions?
Not at all.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have asked 3 times and we have no technical issues. So at this time, we're going to go back to my... Okay. At this time, I would like to open the floor to formal submissions. Those of you who wish to speak concerning the proposed bylaw may address me, the chair, by clearly stating your name. Then you may share the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. Please note that once the public hearing is closed, the regional district will not accept any further submissions. So I'd like to encourage those of you who want to have their comments recorded to do so at this time. And I also stated earlier that if you have made a written submission before 4 o'clock today, that will form part of the formal record. And Stephanie actually went through those submissions and summarized. So now, if you have a formal submission to make, this will be recorded and every word you say will be presented to the full board. So please, and state your name before you speak.
Owen Morris, resident, Area I. My submission has several parts. One for the CO2 reduction. Could we stop spraying the deciduous plants? And could we perhaps put some kind of a carrot out there, encourage people to plant trees, maybe have free trees for people to plant, so we can actually have more forest growing up around us. That would also address the fire issues. And in the fire issues, we have a huge reservoir of water. Why aren't there some decent sized pumps down there so when the fire season starts, we get some water up on top of the mountain, that water will flow down, and it's just a few points of humidity in the air that will separate a nasty fire from something that's controllable. The transportation corridor, I've thought about and discussed it with a lot of people. Why is there not a light rail transit running from Castlegar Trail Nelson? We've got the line in, CPR hardly uses it. It wouldn't be a lot of work to get an LRT working that would take the white-knuckled people off the road in the winters. It would encourage tourism. It would provide a whole service without congesting the highway. That's my submission.
Thank you, Owen. Hey. Next person to make a formal submission. Thank you. Thanks, Al.
My name is, excuse me, my name is Al Lewis. I'm an Area I resident. Folks, I think we're probably heading into a serious recession.
Okay, please address your comments to the chair. Thank you.
There's going to be across this whole country, not just in BC, not just here. Our tax dollars should be directed towards helping local businesses develop new markets for the things that they make and in providing assistance to everyday citizens who are going to have to deal with this crisis. We should pull back from any signature kind of projects like a bike path. I propose that any and all consideration of a bike path from Nelson to Castlegar that goes along Highway 3A be removed from the OCA consideration in the plan for at least 4 years, till the administration down south hopefully changes. Our priorities have to change, I think, because of the kinds of crisis we are having to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Okay, order please. Next speaker, formal submission.
Evening, Andy. Don Moore,
Yep,
Area I.
Yep.
I'd like to formally request that 4.7.2 on the bike development. I'd like the second bullet removed, acquisition of property. Mine's my best piece of property. If they took the 25 meters, it's out of the LR. I mean, I'm going to lose that property for my cattle, my hay, everything else. I think there's a better way of looking at it. Also, I find that we're looking at these plans. It's nice to see that you guys have done a great job on this community plan, but right now we have problems with shitty infrastructure for buses, you know, once an hour maybe.
So
or
let's
they might
be
show up.
respectful with language. I just don't want to go there,
okay,
Don,
I'm
thanks.
sorry about that.
That's okay.
But I mean, can't we look at the infrastructure we have in place and improve it? You know, I'm paying taxes. I go out in the morning, at 6 in the morning, my highways aren't plowed. I come home at night, they're still not plowed. You see, the amount of accidents we have on Highway 3A right now is just outrageous with the amount of speeders and idiots out there. You know, we have to do something with the infrastructure we have in place right now, and we're not addressing it. These future plans are great. I think you guys have done a great job, but right now we have some really serious problems on this piece of highway. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Don. Okay, other speakers making formal submissions?
Hi, I'm Adrian Lovely. I'm submitting this along with my husband, Bill Lovely, and I'm Pass Creek resident of Area I. Thank you for the opportunity to submit our statement that the RDCK board should not approve the third reading of this OCP. Our concerns arise from sections that have been included that do not reflect the residents' feedback under section 2.5 community themes. The report called What We Heard. Specifically section 4.10, which is the climate mitigation and energy, and the addition of a plan called Nelson to Castlegar Active Transportation Corridor, which was not approved by the board in September of 2024. These sections were not written reflecting what the citizens' concerns were, but were written to accommodate the interests of non-residents. These substantial sections are more than just guidelines, specifically why under the climate mitigation, section 4.10, are there actions listed. However, no other sections have included actions. They've only listed objectives and policies. There's been a lot of work performed by the director, the RDCK, the APHC, and residents. However, this current document, as it stands now, is not reflective of the feedback of our community. Below are other areas that should also be addressed, and I'll try and summarize them quickly. 4.21, number 7, reduce rural sprawl. What is rural sprawl? Isn't this what we now have, what we would like to continue to have in Sentinel Mountain? Or did you mean urban sprawl? Why would residents want to reduce rural sprawl or discourage it? That sounds like reducing homesteading and leading us to compact neighborhoods. And the entire 4.10 climate mitigation and energy section should be removed. The RDCK is taking direction from governments and organizations that we did not elect, nor do they represent Sentinel Mountain residents. Managing the climate is not the responsibility of the RDCK. Section 4.10 is just a redo of the failed climate action plan. We do not want nor need the RDCK or any level of government coercing us. Where does the RDCK have authority to implement these actions? We also disagree with supporting Schedule A4 community connections, which is the bike. This is a major expenditure that will impact many residents and will cost millions. This was not approved by the RDCK board in September and should not be included in our OCP right now. Sentinel Mountain residents are not the ones asking for this project, but will be the ones being impacted. Why is this being included now as it's not being board approved? Almost done. Section 6.4, integration of plans, studies, policies, and bylaws. This is a quote. In general, the residents of Sentinel Mountain have expressed an interest to maintain the sometimes competing interest of a minimal level of growth and regulation. These are your words. Based upon the feedback from the residents and the kitchen table discussions, the residents were happy with the level of regulation and were not asking for more. Let's continue to work towards making this OCP about Area I's best interest and keep it within the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Okay. Next speaker, formal submission, please.
Lindsay Luchansky, Area I resident. We live rural for a reason, and it seems like all levels of government are becoming more involved in our personal lives, without us being asked. Frankly, the overreach needs to stop. The only thing in this OCP that I support is the protection of our aquifers and our watersheds. The rest of it needs to be put on hold and seriously reconsidered. Active transportation corridor, you speak about these outside groups, which clearly tells me that you really don't care about our preferences and that you did not consult us. As brought up earlier, none of this was presented at any of these other open houses. Should this be further considered by the board, then it must be voted on by the area residents due to the financial burden you are considering putting on all of us. It's not you guys that are paying for it, it'll be us who have to pay for it. And frankly, in my honest opinion, it should be scrapped, and should these cyclist groups want to do this corridor, then they find their own funding and their own sponsorship and their own route, and leave our land alone. What truly is the point of public engagement when clearly this board will just slide in additional plans without clear and honest community engagement or truly open and honest communication? It's time to start your plan over, as a lot has changed over these past 9 years, especially these past 5 years. Community-driven plans should be voted on solely by the people who live in the community. I honestly hope you take our concerns very seriously and do not implement this current OCP being proposed, and honestly listen to the people in the area and re-engage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, order, please. Okay, next formal submission.
I'd like to start by saying I think that there's many parts of the plan that do reflect the values and aspirations of the community. However, the plan, as currently written on page 21, supports the existing and proposed network of public outdoor recreation lots and trails as indicated on schedules A2 and A4. However, Schedule A4 should be removed from the plan as it has not been subjected to community consultation and engagement. This $66 million proposal was not included in previous kitchen table workshops or earlier iterations of the Area I OCP. In addition, Section 4.7.24, which supports potential expropriation of private property, as well as potential rights of way through agricultural land, is not consistent with Section 4.5.5, which states the objective to promote good neighborliness. So those two things are in conflict. Section 4.10.4, the climate mitigation and energy section, should also be removed. The official community plan is a statement of the objectives and policies of the local government respecting land use in the area. OCPs themselves only regulate land use with development permit areas. However, Section 4.10.4 is an action plan, so that is not an objective or a policy. It may belong somewhere else, but not in the OCP.
So Kate, can you state your name for the full name for the record, please?
My name is Kate Enewald, and I'm a resident and property owner of Area I.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, order, please. Next speaker for making a formal submission. I'll just remind everyone, if you've done a written submission, you don't need to read it again because it's already part of the formal record. So just a reminder. Anyone else that wants to make a formal submission? Okay, here we go.
Natalie Swift, Area I resident. I want to make a formal submission that I totally do not agree with this, as many people in this room also do not agree, and I totally agree with many others that we are residents of this area, that we should have the vote on it, that it shouldn't be chosen for us, and there's many more against this than it is for. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker.
My name is Grant Biljak. I don't agree with your official community plan, and I would like my property back to the zoning it was before this, that I wasn't consulted on, and maybe many others weren't either. And we should have the vote, not Andy, and not directors that we didn't vote for. Thanks.
Thank you, Grant. Okay. Any further speakers wishing to make a formal submission? Okay, I see someone coming up.
My name's Quentin Sperling. My sister Bridget Sperling is over here. We are actually farming our property. We are a federal farm and a provincial farm. We have been at all these different consultations right from the beginning. I recognize Stephanie, Andy, everyone here. I think this whole system is flawed. We have not had anybody that I would say has any qualification to determine what is actually agricultural land and what is not. I don't agree with this proposed new bylaw or whatever they're going to do. I think if they are going to do that, they should actually make a true effort and reach out to the people that are actually farming and actually doing something, and converse with us and get a true understanding of, is this land actually farmable? What other purposes can certain parts of it be used for? I'm very disappointed in that. I don't think a lot of our concerns were actually heard. Some of them were. Some of your plan is very good. I support it. But, and I just agree with Grant. He's my cousin. He borders us. We're probably the two largest agricultural farm areas in Area I. And I just don't agree with this. This is terrible.
Okay, thank you. Okay, order please. Next speaker wishing to make a formal submission. Just state your name and make your submission, please.
Hello, my name is Kieran Lindley. I am a resident of Area I. So I made a formal submission that only 25% of was read, quite a summary. But it seems most people in this room and anybody who came here and made the time for it is against this. I haven't heard anything other than online submissions that indicate anything that anybody fully supports this. And most people are against it on many levels. So I ask that you listen to the people and support our wishes, because that's the right thing to do.
Okay, thank you. Okay, order please. Anyone else here at the meeting that wishes to make a formal submission, please come up to the mic. Okay, we have another speaker, two speakers.
Andy, just
state your name.
My name is Bill Deere.
Okay.
I'm a resident of Glade. I want to thank you for standing up for the ferry people. But further to that, I've been to a lot of these meetings where there was consultation going on, the kitchen table meetings and a lot of that. And there was a lot of promises or comments made by the board and people from representing the RDCK. I don't see a lot of them on that submission, but what I want to say is that at none of those meetings was there ever a vote. Did we ever have a say that was recorded as a vote to what we wanted? And the same thing goes here. Apparently, the board sits there and thinks that we don't have a say in our own lives and our property and our tax rates and all the rest of that. I just want to tell you that you're wrong. We need a say. And if we have to put 1,000 people at your meeting, that might be what we have to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, please. Formal submission.
So I grew up in this area.
Okay, you need to state your name, please.
Mariah Moore.
Thanks, Mariah.
I'm in electoral area I as well. Grew up in this area, and over the past 30 years, obviously things have changed. COVID has played a huge impact on our development in this area. During that time, there were a lot of individuals who traveled to this area and have, well, discovered it, right? Unfortunately, us residents who've been here for a very long time are now being impacted by that. The development of infrastructure has been huge in Nelson specifically. We're looking at condominiums that are costing residents for a 1,200 square foot space approximately $1.2 million, which is absolutely outrageous for this area. We also have other development plans that are projected for Nelson for Halo with massive investors and development. I'm wondering, I suppose, I just want to put this on the record, is this transportation corridor part of all of this major infrastructure that Nelson is proposing? And is the community aware of the acquisitions of Watts Consulting Group as well being taken over by Blue Water, which is all on media? But we haven't heard anything from the RDCK, we haven't heard anything from the cycling club about all of this acquisitions, all of the money that's being invested into our community, and it does have an impact. Us residents who have been here, who have poured our hearts, our souls, we've raised our children here, we are going to be impacted. At the end of the day, if we don't stand up for our rights and we don't protect what we've taken very good care of, it's only going to be continued to be taken away from us, and that's heartbreaking. I can tell you right now, we're going to lose a lot of land if this corridor comes through. It's going to have an impact. Our transportation services aren't going to improve. This area has a massive problem with the transportation in this area. The amount of accidents that highway has, substantial. You're only going to add to it by adding this corridor in place. I'm all for being active. We live in the mountains. There's no reason we need to be connecting people by bicycles. At the end of the day, we have trails, we have vehicles, we have buses, and I'll tell you right now, they're not being used to their full potential, so why would we put something in place that's not going to get used? And we're also using a consulting company that has never done anything like this before. They've never actually done a corridor. So do they really know the impacts of this area? I don't think so. At the end of the day, it comes down to the human element of understanding, yes, there's going to be economic growth, there's going to be developments happening. Just because the world is evolving doesn't mean every single thing needs to change. And at the end of the day, we have a right to speak up. We should have a right to have a vote as to what is happening to our homes and the places that we've made very special. And that needs to be on the record. The other thing I need to bring to your attention is that we are seeing individuals developing things on their properties that are going to impact our households. And whether the RDCK wants to take light to that or not, it's something that you need to respond to, right? We can send you emails, they're ignored. We can talk to you about our concerns, we're told to wait. There needs to be more community engagement. I'll tell you right now, I learned about this meeting tonight. Sending in a submission to the Castlegar News. How many people read the newspaper nowadays? Can you tell me? Because I don't think I've touched a newspaper in about 15 years. Everything is right here. I don't see anything on here. The only reason I actually learned about it is we went to the mailbox and there was a little slip in there. So I would like to see from the RDCK better communications across the board for all of our communities. We deserve to be at these meetings, and we deserve proper notice. Submitting it to the Castlegar News isn't going to help any of us. So I hope that there can be a better relationship moving forward in order to feel valued and heard, because right now I can tell you a lot of people in this room don't feel that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mariah. Okay. Anyone else wishing to make a formal submission, please? Okay. Oh, we have someone coming into the mic.
I'm Blake Strell from Glade. I've already made a submission, but I didn't know everybody was so mad about this mountain bike thing that's going, or this bike trail or whatever. I live in Glade. I spent the last 5 years addressing the damages done by the mountain bike trail that is existing in our community, and the regional district has done absolutely nothing to assist in the environmental damages done and everything else. And the mountain bike clubs don't, the bike clubs don't give a damn about our environment or our communities.
Thank you, Blake. Okay. Anyone else wishing? Oh, there, here we have someone else coming up. And state your name for the record, please, and proceed with your submission.
Yeah, it's Matt Kalmakov, Terry's Road resident. I appreciate the work you guys have done. I just wanted to talk more about the corridor. I live right on the former power line corridor that extends from the Glade store all the way to Terry's Road. So the corridor is used daily by all kinds of people, dog walkers, kids on ATVs, horseback riders, berry pickers, joggers, people walking year-round. We don't need a specially built trail. We already have one. It extends beyond Terry's Road, down the gas line right away. My feeling is we've got back roads from Nelson on the south side of the river that are perfect for biking. We've got back roads in Terry's Loft Road, great for cycling. What we should consider is an integrated plan where we take existing infrastructure, maybe map it, put a few signs, link it together, and use what we've got. Generally, it doesn't sound like the population wants to support a big investment. What we've got is very quaint, very beautiful, and we enjoy it the way it is. We don't need to restrict it to cyclists. The kids are enjoying it. We're not having accidents. We're not having interactions. It's working really well. So thank you for your work. And
thanks, Matt. Okay. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Tyler Bell, and I would like to put a formal statement in that I feel a lot of the surveying and planning has been done from 2016, 2019, and 2023. I feel before any final readings or decisions or implementation is made, there should be a current 2025 survey put out to keyword tax-paying residents of Area I, so that they have their fair say in it, especially in parts of this OCP that will affect taxation, transportation, and rezoning of properties.
Thank you, Tyler. Okay, any further speakers wish to make a formal submission? Okay, I'll ask a second time. And I'll ask a third time. Oh, George, you're coming up.
George Kuchin, Brilliant resident, Area I. We've noticed over the last probably half a century the degradation of the aesthetic qualities of this area, especially the Brilliant area. I want to put your attention towards some of the anecdotal evidence that's showing increased cancer rates. We have past residents of Brilliant that have passed away from breast cancer, especially regarding women. I have a suspicion that we're getting affected by the emissions from the Salgar pulp mill operation that typically are flowing over the Brilliant area because the winds are usually westerlies. They're coming from the north and the west. I'd like there to be some investigation as to whether our land is being toxified by those emissions. Also, we're downwind from the ponds where effluence is being recycled, and also the increased economic activity on the east side of Brilliant is expanding, and it's, in my opinion, taking away the aesthetic value of this area. That would be the dynamic company that's here on the middle flats, the waste management that's happening down below, and I can't seem to understand why you would zone such toxic operations right next door to a residential area. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Okay. Any further submissions in this part of the meeting? Okay, so I ask once, twice. Oh, we have one more. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Simon Ouellette. I live in Pass Creek. I have a couple of concerns around some of the information that was included with the package. One was a map that shows some of the wildfire designations in different parts of the Area I. Our property included some areas that were high, some that were moderate, some that were lower. But I just wanted to address the fact that those values, I think, reflect maybe a out-of-date way of looking at wildfire risk. And I'm concerned that the areas of largest timber on our property were designated the highest risk. And that as the timber grows smaller in various areas, it shows in Crown and private areas, that those are reducing fire risk. And I just want to point out that with how hot things are now and how perhaps this has always been the case, but the biggest stands of forest are now the dampest areas. They're the shadiest, and they're the best at resisting wildfires to some degree. And our forest, for instance, is not contiguous coniferous, but has a mix of various tree types, some of them leafy trees. And a lot of studies have shown now that those trees actually resist forest fires. Whereas the areas that are shown as lower risk are areas that were more recently logged, and they're dense stands of 40 to 50 foot tall trees that, as we've seen a couple of times in our area, once that lights, it goes like crazy. So I just wanted to, before this is adopted, to make a point that I don't know what company or agency was engaged to develop those maps, and from looking at it, it looks like it's just based on tree size, but point out that a lot of our property, there's a huge cedar forest, which are very tall, mature trees, but they wouldn't by any means reflect the highest fire risk. And so if there were areas that were going to be developed, or if it was potentially affecting one's ability to get building permits, et cetera, in those areas, I wouldn't want to think that those areas would be looked upon as the highest risk areas for building or development, when in fact areas that are much smaller growth actually are much more dangerous for overland fire. As well, there was a map prepared which shows water courses and flood risks which run across various parts of the land. And recently, there was a small stream which ran across our property, which someone interfered with, and it was then designated, because Natural Resources came, it was designated as a water course, which I supported. But I see that that's now been included as a high-risk flood zone running through the center of my whole 30 acres. Well, I mean, it's about a quarter of a gallon a minute for 3 weeks of the year, maybe. It's not a water course, it's just a damp area that flows through forest. I wouldn't say flows, but it's underground for almost its complete run. And so this is a specific example, but my concern is just that there might not be very much on the ground information which went into the preparation of some of that mapping. And I'm sure that this is an issue which could be addressed with staff if I was to come and say, you know, this isn't really a water course. There are a lot of, you know, fast-running streams flowing down the mountainside in these areas. This certainly isn't one of them and would never cause a flood issue. But as a property owner, you know, we've paid a fortune to have this property and we pay a lot in taxes. So it would be unfortunate if a designation like that prevented us from, or changed our ability to develop or subdivide or whatever it was that we want to do in the future. And so I just wanted to point out that there may be some structural issues around some of the planning that don't reflect exactly what is happening on the ground. And I hope that if that were the case, that staff would be willing to revisit individual properties and their attributes were the public to bring that to them. And in general, I've spoken with my neighbors down the years about what services are available for us in Pass Creek. And I have to say that there has been a general sort of a disdain for local government's lack of services provided for the dollars that were asked from people who are in many cases people of limited income in rural areas. And I know that's a general statement, but I just want to point out that a lot of times people's only ability to make an income derives from their property. And that the onerous, like the level of regulation which is placed upon property owners in many cases is resented. And I understand the values that local government's attempting to protect in many of those regulations, but at the same time, I think it's understandable why in many cases residents feel that those represent overreach, because people often who are living rurally don't have much other than the resources that are on their property. And so things that curtail their ability to have small businesses, et cetera, or use the land in various ways can be really damaging to their prospects. And so I hope that those things can be addressed too, and that the regional district will be amenable to people who want to do things with their property that aren't allowed, and that these future use maps, which have been, or the future use map at least, which has been published for our area, will be viewed as a general guideline and not something which restricts people from being able to, you know, do more with their property as time goes by. As you said, this is a plan for 25 years, and you know, that's a long time. So hopefully there will be some latitude given there for people who want to do things that maybe even now people aren't even aware of what they might like to do. You know, I have children, and I realized earlier this year that some of the rules had been changed in our area where previous we were allowed a certain number of residences per our acre size. And our plan had been to build residences for our children on our property. And I was told then that had been unceremoniously changed at some point this summer, where now we're back to what we apparently had originally, which was that only one house with one small outer building is allowed per parcel. And that's, you know, gonna have to force a significant rethink on our part around what our property can be used for, because the cost of subdivision is significant, and all the regulation around that is pretty onerous. So thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. Okay, any further formal submissions before we go online? I will ask for second time and the third time. Thank you. So now, for anyone online, is there anyone online that wishes to make a formal submission? If there is, please state your name once you're unmuted and make your submission. Nelson, do we have any? Not seeing any hands. I will ask, could we do just a sound check with Sangeeta again, just to make sure we have no technical issues?
Hi.
Hey, Sangeeta, can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will ask for a second time, is there anyone online that wishes to make a formal submission? And I'll ask for a third time, is there anyone online that wishes to make a formal submission? Okay, seeing none. I'm going to make closing remarks. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending this public hearing and providing the regional district with your comments. Your presentations were well thought out, eloquent, and will resonate with us. In terms of what happens next, the minutes of this public hearing, along with the Area I Sentinel Mountain Official Community Plan, bylaw number 2821, and related amendment bylaws 2967 and 2968 will be referred, and is this March 20th date accurate that I have in my notes? That's what we're targeting. Okay, will be referred to potentially at the earliest the March 20th 2025 Regional District Board meeting. As I noted in the beginning of the hearing, it is the Board of the Regional District of Central Kootenay who will decide the final disposition of these bylaws. So thank you for coming out this evening. Thank you for being respectful. And I now declare this public hearing adjourned. Thank you very much. So this completes both public hearings. Thank you for your attendance and enjoy the rest of your evening. Yep.
Record.